President-elect Donald Trump likes to remind everyone that one of the reasons that he won this election was because of the issue of immigration. His pick to be border czar, Tom Homan, sat down with CNN's Caitlin Collins in the last hour, and this is what he said.
I'm still working on it. I got the general framework written up, and I'm working with other folks on it. But by the time the inauguration happens, the plan will be baked, and we'll be ready to launch the day of the inauguration.
So how many days after Trump is sworn in before this effort to carry out the mass deportations begins? I know you said it starts on day one, but after how many days will we actually start to see that happening?
Day one. Day one will be ICE officers across the country will be out on the streets. Right out of the gate, President's made it clear, and I made it clear, the priority right out of the gate is public safety threats and national security threats. And there's plenty of them to find.
Joining us at the table is CNN.com opinion writer Raul Reyes. Raul, when you heard what he said there, I mean, there were two things that stood out to me. One, he was like, I don't really know what the numbers are. We'll have a plan upon inauguration, but they don't have one yet. So does it make sense to you then that they would be ready on day one to start this sort of boots on the ground deportation process that is supposed to, I think, be so big that it actually shows that Trump is serious about what he promised?
Right. You know, the thing, my big takeaway from this interview, two things. One was that for someone who has, you know, whatever you think of Trump's policies, they will require a significant capital expenditure. They will require tremendous buy-in from the public in terms of the cost, money from Congress. There are tremendous legal issues that will be raised. What struck me, like that's just at the ground zero basis. What struck me is that we didn't hear. There were so few specifics about how he plans to carry all of these things out. And even when he was specifically asked, well, how many people are you targeting? What are your potential goals for the year? How much money do you want from Congress? For someone who is saying that he will be carrying out these policies on day one, that was extremely vague. And the other thing that, for me, it was very troubling, is that he leaned very heavily into the idea of undocumented people and this myth of their association with criminality, as though they were all dangerous criminals and national security threats. And again, he mentioned when Caitlin Collins asked him specifically about things like birthright citizenship, about mass deportations, about the cost of undocumented people to society. Thomas Homan said, let the courts decide. Those were his words he said several times. The courts have decided on birthright citizenship. The courts have ruled that undocumented children are entitled to public education. Many of these things have already been decided. So to me, this issue really raised questions about how ready they are and whether or not he is willing to, and then the administration is willing to live up to United States responsibilities as a matter of law to asylum seekers.
So let me play a little bit more of what Homan said about one of the few specifics I think we got from him. This is when talking about how many beds they're going to need in order to even start this process of removing people from the country.
I know the current number of beds available. I know how many agents are there right now, but I'm looking, we need many more detention beds than are currently available. I mean, on the Trump administration, we had over 55,000 people in detention at any given day, and they're down to less than 30,000 now.
How many more beds do you think you'll need?
We need at least 100,000 beds, and because of beds will turn over in 30 days, which gives us our free bed every day. But I'm not going to put a limit on it. I'm telling the minimum we need 100,000 beds because we got a big population to look for.
So, Gail, I mean, does he sound ready? I mean, let's take as a given, Trump ran on this, he has to do it. Are they ready to actually do it?
Well, this is somebody who's been dealing as somebody who worked for ICE for many years, who knows the problem. And one of the things he made clear in that interview is that they were first going to look for those with criminal connections, and those were the people that were first on the list to be deported. So I think that is where the main emphasis is going to be. Now, the overall plan, he was very clear about that. He said it's all going to depend on how much money Congress is willing to allocate for it.
So can I just talk a little bit about what he said in terms of our first priority will be criminal undocumented immigrants? Let's be very clear. The priority to deport criminal undocumented immigrants has always been a priority for every administration. And in fact, when Trump came into office in 2017, he reduced the number of criminal undocumented immigrants that we had gone after under Obama because he eradicated the policy of prioritizing criminal undocumented behavior. So I just want to make that very clear, because when people say we have to go after the criminals first, that's happening. The criminal undocumented immigrants are the first ones. They are either in jail serving their time, or, and this is something that people completely ignore, they come from countries that aren't taking back their immigrants. So again, I think they're completely unprepared for this. He sounds like he has a concept of a plan, but to your point, he has to do it. And so I think what we are about to encounter is complete chaos, complete cruelty, because the people that are going to be deported are going to be your next door neighbors, are going to be the people that run the market on Saturdays and Sundays, are going to be the people that come to your house to do your general contracting.
I am not even sure that they will get to that point, because I mean, look, they're going to be looking for low-hanging fruit. And there are people that have deportation orders, so they're going to start there. I guess it seems to me that they're going to try to make a big flash and bang about this. And what it's going to really be is kind of the same thing that's already been happening.
But Abbey, the reason why we should take it very seriously and not presuppose that this will not have a tremendous impact on different communities, whether or not you are a citizen or here unlawfully, is because these type of programs invite massive racial profiling of Latinos, of Asian Americans, of people who speak other languages. They by their nature, they inspire potentially massive invasions of civil rights. And when he talks about wanting to involve state and local law enforcement and the military, that in itself opens state and local law enforcement to tremendous litigation, because ICE officers, Border Patrol agents, they undergo very specific training, so they can make assumptions and decisions about someone's status. He's talking about involving local police who don't have that training, and it takes them away from fighting crime.
DOD, though, and just to be clear about what he said DOD is not going to be involved in actually rounding people up, so to speak, anything that requires a badge and a gun. They would be, he said, a force multiplier, building facilities, opening up beds, providing airplanes and infrastructure. So that clarity, we've gotten that. Do you believe it?
Yeah. So I think of the things that this incoming administration has said it's going to do, I do think that the mass deportations is one of the things that they are trying to do in earnest. I mean, it is one of the more identifiable policies that they ran on. The weight of public opinion is in favor of doing something tougher than what historically has been done at the border. And sadly, Republican politicians have succeeded in painting millions and millions of undocumented people who are contributing members of our society as bad people, as criminals.
And Abbey, remember, this is not an unsolvable crisis. Politically, yes, but it is not an unsolvable crisis. If our lawmakers and the Trump administration wanted to do something about the influx of people at the border and our large undocumented population, which we've seen across multiple administrations, they could crack down on employers, businesses, and just regular people who knowingly employ undocumented people, including through subcontractors. That would be far more productive. Instead, he's going after the most vulnerable people in the country who are entitled to due process. That's the Constitution and settled law.
You know, when New York was ground zero for all the migrants coming in, Eric Adams, the mayor here, went down to Washington and said, look, I got all these healthy young men here, and they want to work. I know they didn't come here the right way, but can you give me some work permits? Let them go work the right way, and the door was shut in their face.
Well, I'll tell you what's going to happen.
That didn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
I don't see a Trump administration that turning around and saying, "Oh, let's give them work permits."
No,
I think he's going to do something very different.
Yes.
For that, Raul Reyes, thank you very much for joining us. Everyone else, coming up next.